Greetings, everyone, and welcome once again to the Outhouse podcast. I'm your host, Ozzina Arcane. As always, with me, I have Mad Matt, Test Zero, and Ojunix. Say hello, guys.
Hello, guys.
Hello.
Hi.
Today
Howdy, y'all.
we're here to talk about The Wizard, which is not the worst movie out of the ones we've watched so far.
No, it isn't.
Oh,
I'd
no,
say,
I was actually enjoying myself for the most part.
For the most part, yeah.
I'd say
Part of it is just the whole nostalgic for the 80s thing, but yeah.
out of the six we've watched, I'd say this is probably the third best.
Up mid tier, yeah.
I put Mario and Masters of the Universe higher, but this is better than everything else.
I would put Masters on the top, and I actually would put this next, and then Mario.
That's kind of my book too.
Okay. Well, we still have plenty of things to complain about with this, but
Oh yes.
real
Oh,
quick,
yes.
let's go over the basic premise of the movie. Is aside from the video game tie-ins, it's the whole broken home story kind of thing, where the two parents got divorced. One of them got some of the kids, the other one got the autistic son.
Mhm.
At least that we assume is the
Yeah,
issue.
the movie never specifically says he's autistic, but the way he acts and considering the way that people of that we would assume were like that and at the time were treated, it all kind of tracks.
Right.
Right.
Right, and it was just they didn't really call him that back then, so obviously it doesn't say that in the movie.
Right.
But then he wants to run off. We don't really know why he keeps. What does he keep saying, guys?
California.
We don't know why he keeps doing that until much later in the movie, which we'll get to that when we
Like the
talk
last
about
10 minutes.
when we talk about the actual scenes in the movie. But he keeps trying to run away. Eventually, his brother from the other household runs off with him. They go on a road trip trying to get to California.
Yeah, because
And-
they're going to transfer him to an institute for where he's not. He's obviously they're like probably not even going to be able to see him ever again. So they're just putting him into an institute, and just kind of forget about it. So his brother's like, no, if they want to ship this kid away, I'm going to take him myself. I'm gonna take him, and we're going to run away together. So he's just kind of being just he's a
The most
I guess he's
caring
trying to be
family
a
member
good-
he's got.
yeah, pretty much, yeah.
He's trying to be a good brother because he doesn't think his dad's doing enough to help him.
Yeah.
Right.
Along the way, they meet the girl, Haley, and they end up deciding to have the kid enter into a video game competition. And obviously, the police are supposed to be looking for them, though we never see that. We just see the crazy child retriever man that
Child
the mother
catcher.
hired,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
I think we can all agree is not an actual profession.
Nope. Not
Shouldn't
even
be.
close.
There's bounty hunters, there's private detectives, but there's literally no one you would hire to go forcefully bring your child back. Like,
Yeah.
he wouldn't really have the legal authority to do that. I'm pretty sure that
Yeah.
things
no,
would
yeah.
not turn out well if anyone witnessed that occurring.
Nope.
Nope. As a matter of fact,
Yeah,
he
yeah,
gets
I mean-
twice the beatings he got in this movie.
Yeah, because 2 times he grabs the kid and he gets rightfully picked up and thrown out.
Yeah, so it is fun seeing this guy get his ass kicked because he certainly deserves it. He does come off as a complete sleazebag.
Right.
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
Right. He I think we can all agree he is the least likable character in the movie. There's some other shitty ones, but he's the top dog among the crappy characters.
Oh
Oh
yeah.
yeah. Basically.
Like, and we all got a bit of amusement because we completely forgotten this line was at the one point where he almost has, we haven't really said the names of the characters. The
Yeah.
one,
The autistic kid is named Jimmy.
right?
The one played by the kid from the Wonder Years is Corey.
The girl's
Or-
Haley. I can't remember the dad and the brother's names.
The
they're
dad,
not that important.
The dad was named Sam, and the brother was named Nick. He was
Ah.
played by Christian Slater.
But when the creepy guy finally gets his hands on Jimmy at an arcade late in the movie, I think we all were a bit amused when Haley just screams and yells, "He touched my breast!"
And his response, I touched her breast. She had no breast.
How do you know
Well,
You know
that wasn't
how
his
do you
response.
know that?
Experienced here.
That wasn't his
People make
response at
fun
the
of that
time.
line, but people make fun of that line or point at that line about how awkward or cringy it is. But no, that's actually a pretty legitimate defense that someone like that would have if you have this guy that's chasing you and anything goes. The girl, she does establish that this girl is an incredibly street smart character who
Yes.
kind of knows
Oh,
how to
yeah.
do all this shit. So she knows how to manipulate people. She would know exactly what to say to get this guy kicked out because they are in a place where adults and kids are not really interacting with each other, but may very well have drunken adults around. So the security are going to be very quick to step in if they see somebody saying this stuff.
Right.
And then of course they look at the guy and he's immediately has Jimmy in his hands at the time, so that's not a good look for the guy.
No.
Yeah, I'm honestly, the thing is,
He
like,
looks like a creeper.
in all reality, there were like several times earlier in the movie where I couldn't believe nobody stepped in with the way this guy was acting in public.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
More than a few times. Yeah.
So what should we talk about first? Should we talk about all the really weird inaccuracies with the video game stuff?
Now, let's say,
That's going to be the meat of the episode. Let's get some of the early, easier
Yeah.
stuff out of the way.
yeah, that should be the last part.
Because I mean, the thing is, I do realize that like during a lot of the actual segments where they were talking about like family stuff, my brain just kind of shut off.
Yeah, no, all the time they were talking about family shit, I was just looking in the background trying to see the games they were playing, which I think is true for most people who watch this movie.
Actually, I was paying good, decent attention to it, and I
I
got
was gonna
most
say,
of it.
I actually she was generally enjoying the family parts, and that might just because as I grew up in the 80s to 90s, that was like the majority of films I watched as a kid was those type of movies, and for the most part, I always kind of look back on them fondly. So that's just a me thing.
And that being said, it wasn't like it was badly done either. It's just
Yeah,
that
exactly.
at worst, I might say some of it was a little awkwardly written.
Yeah, this is the kind of movie, I keep hearing that they're going to try to remake this movie, but I mean, honestly, I could probably write a better story based on this same idea. I was thinking about it at the time, but the movie really is kind of a live-action cartoon.
Yeah,
In many ways.
Right.
in very many ways. And honestly, I could definitely see where they could do a modernization and make it a bit better in spots, especially when again it comes to some of the dialogue.
Right.
But I would definitely keep some of the characterizations because those seem to kind of click.
Yeah, the fact that they're able to kind of bond over playing these video games, that he just, like, not necessarily him that didn't like it, but it was Jimmy. Like, Jimmy was the one that kind of played all this stuff. Or didn't he mention that the NES was Corey's? Because he just kind of had it in the car and they hooked it up to, they would just hook it up to the TVs as they were traveling.
I don't.
Yeah.
I don't remember if they said it was Jimmy's or Corey's, but the brother Nick fixed it when it was broken, supposedly.
Yeah. And then while Nick was just playing it just casually, because hey, he was pretty laid back through this whole movie. I mean, yeah, he's trying to find his lost brothers, but he never.
Yeah, because he would always kind
never,
of have he always kind of point out, was like, well, there's nothing we can do right now. Let's play some video games. Let's get some food. Or...
But don't get me wrong. I mean, he probably was acting the most natural because, like you said, every time something bad happened, he just kind of had to go with the flow because it's like you can't really do much.
What are you going to
At
do?
this moment. At the same time, I can't help but feel bad because it's Christian Slater, and I've seen him in play movies where he could just go nuts on screen, and yet in this movie he's
He's very laid back.
Laid back, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about just all the stuff that was fucked up with the guy that was trying to retrieve the kids, because there were quite a few scenes.
God,
Like,
this guy.
like how about the I admittedly, like, when they first, the dad and the older brother first interact with him, and he's being like, I don't get paid.
Threatening them.
I don't get paid if you find the kids before me. And I remember I actually said that's the point where you slash his tires. and then later on, he actually slashed their tires.
Yeah, it was like
Mhm.
that's not how it's supposed to play out.
I was like,
He's the bad guy.
I was like, he can't do that. He stole my idea.
But no, the fact I almost that's such a weird dynamic for this character to have, because obviously he's supposed. Usually, the guy that's trying to rescue the kids is supposed to be the good guy, but no, he's trying to rescue the kids purely for selfish reasons, just because they have a like bounty isn't the right word, but they basically because they have a bounty on them.
Because this guy's been included to have a price on the kid's head so he can bring him in.
Yeah, but so he doesn't want the kids back just so the kids can be safe. He wants the kids back so he can get paid.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is really a dick move, honestly.
And it's such a weird thing. It's such a weird thing too, because like hiring someone who so clearly hates kids for that job is such a weird idea.
And yet it would not be it's not sadly not uncommon, because some people just do it for simply a paycheck.
I did love the scene where after they catch up to him after he previously slashed their tires, the dad sees him and he just puts his foot to the metal. He just slams the gas, and his son's like, "What are you doing?" He just rams the car.
Not once, not twice, but three times.
He just plows through that fucking thing. It was good seeing him get his comeuppance several times in this movie, because this guy really is a sleaze.
Oh yeah.
And
I remember one of the other times he threatened people was he randomly grabbed one of two kids that were like on a bridge or something overlooking the canyon or something, and immediately just like, oh, these aren't the kids. I would have loved to have someone right there to sock him right in the face for that.
I was gonna say,
or just like a big guy just kind of stares him down, and he just kind of.
The thing is, in all reality,
that is one kind of disappointing thing about this. He does kind of get his ass kicked a lot, but you never really see a good final destruction of him. Like just get him just completely fucked up, or like he doesn't get arrested or anything like that. They just kind of stop having him in the movie at one point.
Right. Well, we pointed out is near the end of the movie he tries to talk to the mom, and she basically just tells him to shut up, and then that's the last of him. Like there's no real explanation for what happened to him after that. But I remember the one point we all were pointing out how messed up what he did was as far as legality goes, aside from the weirdness of his job to begin with, was the tow truck.
Oh yeah.
Where he has
that all levels of illegal, and
that's several levels of lawsuits that this man would lose all the money he had on his job.
Right. He just, because those don't understand, he realized that the dad and the father were at the same place as him. They didn't see him, and he just randomly gave a tow truck driver $50 to tow their car away, which I don't think you can do that. Like that would you'd lose your towing license.
That tower would lose its license, and that place would be out of business.
But not only that, they literally had their entire truck stripped down within minutes.
Yeah, and it's like he would say that. I would assume he told him the car was like abandoned or something, but it's in a parking lot. It's not like it's on the side of the road or anything. It's in a parking lot in front of a diner. It's
in a parking lot. It's in a parking spot, and it was parked there while the tow truck was already sitting there.
Exactly. Yeah. The tow truck didn't even see the guy show up.
I think that can kind of
work.
I think he was looking at a magazine when the guy approached him, but still, it's like you would have noticed the car that parked right next to you having just pulled up.
Yeah, that's the thing. You could use that as a plot point. Like, he sees the car, like, maybe the car's already beat up or something, and it's, like, somewhere down the road. So he sees, like, hey, these guys' car. Oh, I'll call the tow truck and have it towed or something. And that'll slow him down. But you can't do it, like, right in the front of the damn diner like that.
Right.
But yeah, here we are looking at little plot holes in the fucking Wizard.
You're thinking too hard.
For this movie, yeah.
Was there anything else you guys wanted to discuss before we get to the video game stuff?
Let's talk about Haley and Corey's quote-unquote relationship in this.
Oh, really awkward relationship going on. Yeah.
You mean how fast it kept going back and forth. Make up your mind.
I mean, yeah, they are kids, but they are still pretty young to be having all these weird hormonal things going on. And the fact
that already is kind of a head tilter.
though,
There is that one point where he basically accuses her of being a lesbian, so she kisses him to prove she's not, which is like, okay, that's
and not only that, she like so, and then she starts smiling and tipping her shoe toes together. It's like, I like that. It's just like, okay.
Yeah, that was weird.
Yeah.
Though at the same time, I kind of had to point this out. This was actually a pretty common thing again in these type of movies during that age, where
Yeah.
they just suddenly wanted to make kids come off more adults than the actual adults in
Well,
these
then
movies.
also to add the another level to the weirdness is that at the end of the movie, when everyone's going back home, she's apparently in the truck with the boys all the way back home.
yeah. Where is she
Yeah,
going? I would guess that she's because she lives like out near Rito, so I guess they would be taking her back.
Yeah, there were so
Yeah.
many things that were not explained at the end of the movie.
Yeah,
which
it-
I'll
it
save
just-
some
it
of
just-
those for later because it'll be related to the video game stuff.
Yeah, it just kind of. I mean, if that was
Yeah,
the case,
Lucas
first,
ties
but-
enough into the video game stuff. I'm not surprised we're not talking about him yet.
But
Oh, we'll get to that very
Oh
much.
yeah.
but it just like at the end, as you pointed out, it's just it's almost like, well, we adopted her now because she has shitty parents, I guess.
Right. Well,
Which-
I
I
think
don't think
I
they
mean-
ever show her parents. She just kind
No,
of
they-
lives in a trailer.
Yeah.
They did, but she more or less basically makes it sound like her mother is a gambling addict and her father travels.
He's constantly
so
on the
much.
road trucking, and literally only his buddies are the only people she sees very often.
Yes, which is why she basically knew how to get help from the truckers
Oh.
because she knows them.
Oh,
Which
you
is-
you
that's
reminded
a
me.
fairly decent
Oh,
character
yeah.
design.
This-
I kind of like her as a character. She makes sense. She's kind of
Yeah.
a streetwise girl that has to fend
Yeah.
for herself. She
Yeah.
knows how to manipulate people.
Because it's
Right.
not video game related, we got to talk about Spanky.
Oh,
Spanky.
Spanky
I
the
forgot his
trucker.
name, but I'm glad you brought him up. I like Spanky.
I like
Spanky
Spanky too.
Spanky is such a good character for such a limited amount of time. He's literally the Bob of this movie. If you remember Bob from Batman.
Right.
Or
Uh-oh,
he reminds me
yeah.
of the.
Yeah.
He immediately reminded me of the cameraman from UHF.
Yes.
Yeah, he's just this. He's this black trucker that's apparently friends with Haley's dad, and they literally have him gamble in a casino for them so they can get traveling money.
Yeah, and I
Get
just
kicked out. Get kicked out, of
Yeah.
course.
And
Yeah,
later
but-
on, when they need to get save the little brother when he gets captured again,
Yeah,
and she literally calls
Yeah.
Spanky up again, and him and 3 other truckers block off the road, close in on the guy, and give him a hell of a shiner.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
what-
don't
what-
forget, Spanky immediately goes, "So you touched her breast, huh?"
you tried to
As soon
defend
as he hears
himself.
that, the child grabber is just like, "Oh Lord, no, 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 not this again, not this again, no!"
You just hear a big slug. Which, speaking of slugging, with the kids were first got together and they're spending the night inside like a abandoned vehicle
Or
graveyard.
something like that. Yeah.
And he's just like messing with her, saying like, "You're not scared of anything," and he just pulls a random monster mask out of his backpack, and he's like, "Are you sure?" She looks at him and just knocks his lights out with
Yes.
one.
For whatever reason, the sound effect on that just sounds like that punch is so fucking brutal.
Yeah. It's like she
So the-
cold
and he
cocked
takes a
him.
punch and just freezes against the wall.
Yeah.
I would believed it too.
That was. I think we all kind of went, "Oh," when that happened.
That's the power of sound design right there.
Mhm.
It's like you felt that.
80s sound design.
Yes,
one-
80s sound design.
One thing this movie definitely had for going for it was its sound design and its soundtrack.
Yeah,
The
the
soundtrack,
soundtrack
yes.
was really fun.
Yeah, soundtrack top notch. Have no complaints.
Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure I know a few of those songs outside this movie. Didn't even know they were in here.
Yeah.
That's the late 80s. All those songs would have been in it.
All right.
It's like a sampler of just random. You just hit random on the 80s station on your.
Like
on
80s
Spotify.
decent 80s pop. Yeah.
I think we more or less have said what we want to about most of the characters outside the video game stuff, though.
I mean,
Aside-
Because because video games are a character in of themselves. It really is kind of the main draw that people
Right.
have of this, even
Yes.
at the time. Like even when this movie was new, you would want to watch The Wizard just because you liked seeing people playing video games. Now you can go on YouTube and see you can see Let's Plays of it, but just
Yeah.
the fact that the fact that video games were so huge at the time, the fact that you were able to kind of live into this culture, and like we all kind of grew up in that time. We understood that video games were a big thing. They were for our childhood, and things were so important. But seeing them actually like integrated into the story like this, even if they did it poorly, it was incredibly memorable for us.
Right.
Right.
Because I think up to that point, there's maybe only been like one other game or one other movie that tried to incorporate at least games of some kind like this, and that was, I think, Cloak and Dagger beat The Wizard by like, I want to say 5 years or so.
And when did Ghostbusters 2 come out?
That would have been 86.
Because
I
they
want to
did
say that was
they
at
used
least
the
2
NES
years.
Advantage to control the control Statue of
Yes.
Liberty, and of course you look at stuff like Tron, where video games were an important part of that.
Yeah.
But it was more about just video games as a whole, like not really as like specific games, but just video games in general were this big thing. But here you actually see they actually name drop the games, and they get a lot of facts wrong about it, but they name drop them and they actually show footage from the games, which you would never see in movies at the time.
A lot of Ninja Turtles won.
Oh yeah, they would play a lot of Turtles.
Yeah, it's like that was the worst one.
I mean, at the time, I don't think anybody really
Other
hated
ones
it
I
that much. But
remember- The other ones I remember, well, they obviously went into Mario Brothers 3. They had Mario Brothers 2. I think we at least heard Mario Brothers 1, or at least one of the versions of it.
I think it was versus Super Mario Brothers.
Ninja
or,
Gaiden,
yeah.
did we say that
Yeah,
already?
a lot of the Ninja
Ninja
Gaiden.
Gaiden, wasn't
Ninja
it? Yeah.
Gaiden. Hey.
Which was the preliminary.
The preliminary.
Thank
The
you.
preliminaries.
Which is like that is a brutal way to just get to take people out of the game, see who's the best. Because dear
Uh-huh.
God Almighty.
But before we
Just
talk
gotta have a
about
good score.
the final competition, I think we need to start with the game that ties directly back into the last episode of our podcast. Double
Dragon!
F1 Dream.
Oh yeah, because that was the first game.
That was the first game they played, and it was where we immediately realized
50,000?
the
We were
right,
actually- yeah, we got
the,
50,000 on Double Dragon.
the
yeah, when
writers.
we looked at this, I actually grabbed my Switch. I opened up Nintendo Switch Online and looked at my file on Double Dragon. I was in the same stage, like the 4 stage. I don't know if that's mission 2 or 3, but I only had like 16,000
I think it was
points.
4.
If that's even worse, he was only playing that game for like 3 minutes and he had 50,000 points. How the fuck do you do that?
Right. It's
I
one of
was,
those.
I was playing and I had like 16,000 on
It's
mine.
one of those things where you realize that the actual
The arcade,
writers.
the arcade emulator must be in double speed.
Well, not
Yeah,
only that, but also the actual writers also show that they don't
Bunch
know
of
what they're
things.
actually talking about. In
Exactly,
because
because these are
Either they
writers
don't
that
know or they just
understand
watch
video
things, yeah.
games. They understand video games in the whole sense of Space Invaders, Pac-Man, where you have a level and you have a score. So the higher level and the higher score, that's good. High score means good thing. So playing Double Dragon for a short, whatever the game is called, playing game for a short amount of time, he got 50,000 points. That sounds like a large number.
You
Yeah,
play
that makes
game,
no fucking
you still
sense.
have lives, you still have points. You're doing really awesome. Oh.
You could have been playing like Tetris or anything else like that. Yeah,
No.
50,000 would have been okay to get in a short amount of time. Or he's playing, or you have him playing like Asteroids, because later on you have him hustling those two people, the two businessmen. So I would totally understand if they were playing like Asteroids or Space Invaders, something from the 70s, that they probably would have known that game better. But no,
Something
this was
close to
this
the-
was
close to the
specifically
70s, early 80s,
Nintendo
yeah.
games. This is all specifically Nintendo games. So you see the Play Choice 10 a lot in this. I was kind of surprised at how consistent they were, because anytime he's playing in an old Nintendo game, he's playing on the Play Choice 10 instead of an actual arcade machine.
Right.
Because for a lot of these things, they didn't have dedicated arcade machines, and I keep talking over you guys because this is something obviously that
Yeah.
I pay attention to.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Right,
you're the one
understandable.
you're the one of us that actually said even as a kid you noticed the discrepancies immediately. But I was gonna say the one thing is they tried to draw attention to how impossible what he did is, because his brother's like, how did you get 50,000 points in 5 minutes? It's like, well, the thing is, you're drawing attention to it makes it even worse, because it's not just something.
It's literally
that's-
impossible.
Yeah, it's not just
Literally
miraculous. It's impossible. You can't. There's no way to do that.
Again, unless there was something weird or bugged out about that arcade game, there's just no way.
Yeah, maybe you're getting times 10 points for every enemy you defeat.
And again,
Or maybe he's
2
on
times
New Game
speed.
Plus. Maybe he's on the second loop.
And I don't think they really.
In 5 minutes.
And of course, they don't even show the footage of it. That was the whole thing. They don't show footage of him
That's it.
actually having 50,000 points on Double Dragon.
No,
they
Which,
don't.
you know what, how much this movie, how much this movie tries to kind of relate this stuff to the games, because they do mention a lot of things about these games that make sense, which is weird. The inconsistencies is what's really weird
Right.
about this, because oftentimes they will say things that makes sense. Like he's talking about, he's playing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. He can say, "I got the scroll level on I got the scroll weapon on level 3, and I almost beat Mecha Turtle." And like that's a sentence that makes sense. You fight Mecha Turtle at the end of level 3, and I'm pretty sure there is a
There
car
is-
driving by my window, and I'm pretty sure there is a scroll weapon on that level. So
I'm pretty sure there's a car driving by my window.
I know.
But yeah, and the thing is you point out they don't even show the scores in the game that reflect what they're saying, because they showed Jimmy racing against Haley in Double Dragon, and they got close to 30,000, but neither of them had 50,000 appear on the screen.
exactly, and they were right about the point in the game where you would have about that score. They were in the forest level.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it is. I just like I don't. It's such a weird thing to. When games are such a big part of your movie, it's weird to have an oversight like that.
Yes, exactly. And it's the thing is that is not a new thing. That even back that was happening ever since they were making video game movies. They were getting that shit wrong, which is so goddamn annoying. Which they never fucking get it right in so many movies and so many TV shows. They never fucking get it right.
Well, my thought on this movie is it might not even be that they don't get it right. It's the fact that they're fudging shit.
Which I have always wanted to write a movie. It's basically like Rocky, but with a video game competition. But actually get the information correct.
Get it right.
I feel like that's
something
part
reasonable.
And I feel like that's part of why Ready Player One was so popular, because for the most part, they actually got the shit right. They talked about video game lore that made sense and was correct within the context.
And then they got extra pop culture movie lore right along with it.
Yes.
And that all
True.
tied together in the way that they
True.
desired, both in the book or in the movie version.
I give Ready Player One. It did keep things correct to what they would do or able to do.
That
Yes,
being said,
it's-
I would have been more on top of seeing that movie if they actually kept Ultraman in it, but that's just me.
As
Eh,
and you know
Yeah,
that's
right,
that's opposed to Free Guy, where they don't know how servers actually work.
oh God.
Like they had a scene in that where the entire game is kept on servers, and the villain is smashing the servers, and parts of the game are going on. I was like, that's not how servers work.
Oh.
Each server has a different instance of the game, not
Yes.
a part of the
Part of
game.
the game.
Yeah,
No.
it's like all you would have to do was just find the server that the main character was on, and if you get
Smash
that,
it and they're
and
gone.
just pull
And
the
then-
plug on that one, yeah.
and then
Yeah.
that would have been the end of the movie right there.
So
but-
this is a problem. That's because that's a movie from last year. That's a problem that is still happening.
well, yeah,
that's the thing
because
is, like,
Shame.
This is
Because-
not a like computers and servers. This shit happens. Like people our age are writing movies. We understand that servers don't work that way.
because
They don't.
because a basic movie viewer doesn't care, and they don't want to put the effort to explain that this is how it
That's
works.
basic movie viewers do care, and they know better.
You know what it makes
Or
me think
they-
of? It makes me
Or
think
the
of a
basic
really,
movie players do care, and they write it bad on purpose just to get people, assholes like us, talking about it on the internet and giving them free publicity.
well.
Oh,
There's also
that's also a possibility.
there's also another really bad instance I think of. That's not specifically games, but have any of you seen Live Free or Die Hard?
I think I saw it once.
the bit about covering the camera.
No, the bit where the bad guys hire hackers to do stuff for them, and then when they no longer find them useful, they put a trap in their computer that causes it to explode and destroy their entire apartment. When computers can't blow up like that.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
you put
that's-
a bomb in
Unless
there,
it's
they
a
can, but...
That-
Yeah.
that's
Then you'd have to do more than give it a virus. You have
Yeah,
to
yeah.
set some sort of thing for the battery.
yeah, I know what the scene you're talking about now. Longest time is like, oh, they just send some kind of virus that just makes their computers explode, even
Right.
though Like I said,
that is
that's
a
not
thing
how-
you can sort of do. Like you can,
Yeah.
if you get like really basic level control over the computer, you could overclock their CPU and cause it to destroy itself. But
Yeah,
but it wouldn't
it
detonate their
like a
entire
room
apartment.
blow up.
yeah, you
It
couldn't
would-
make it blow up unless there's like actual explosive stuff inside the computer.
Yeah.
But then I swear to God, I think I'm remembering that they look in that not the people, but like the viewers of the camera for the movie zooms inside one of the computers and like suddenly it has C4 in it. It's like, when did they get that in there?
They didn't show any explosives. They just hacked it, and when they
I-
hit a button on their keyboard, it blew up. Because
right. That,
They-
Were they
They're-
putting
they-
those endearing young charms?
They didn't have
Either
an
I-
explanation for it. They didn't.
Yeah, then either I'm thinking of another movie that did that, or it's like my brain had to.
Because
make a
they did it to
concept
multiple
explain.
hackers, so like it wasn't just like
Yeah.
one guy. But
Right.
It-
Yeah. So it's possible. I just thought
you might
it
have it
up.
confused with a different movie. It's very possible.
Yeah.
But back on topic, the other
Right.
the other part of this movie, Wizards, that they mainly got right, because they showed a lot of games. They showed Turtles, they showed Mega Man 2, Ninja
Yeah.
Gaiden, and all that stuff. They didn't really talk about the game mechanics of those. The thing where they really screwed things up, and I guess like the audience at the time wouldn't have known this because the game wasn't out yet, was
Yeah.
Super Mario 3.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the ending bit with video gaming is such a bunk piece of garbage.
Yeah, Video Armageddon
How is any of this scored? It makes zero sense.
Yes, the whole idea is they are going for a score competition. Okay,
Yes.
that's your premise. We
Yes.
we can accept that as a premise. They're playing a game. Super Mario 3 does keep track of your score. Okay, that's acceptable. Then she starts yelling about get the star, get the warp whistle. None of this provides points in the game.
No, it does not.
It does not, and yet as we watch the movie, it suddenly gives him points when he hits the warp. It's
Right.
And in fact,
how?
by getting the warp whistle, he loses out on the points of defeating Boom Boom at the end of the castle. So which would have given him even more points.
Right.
So theoretically, if he had not
Well,
gone for the
actually-
warp whistle, he would have had more points.
Well,
And the-
actually, I don't think any of them even got to Boom Boom anyways. All of them were like on level 4 or 5.
And the other
Yeah.
funny thing was, so they
And again, the competition was supposed to last for 10 minutes. It's like, how they got that fast in 10 minutes?
No, I think you can pretty reasonably get to the
you could
mini
get through
fortress
most
in
of that
10
in 10 minutes, but I think you need
Because
the
the
5 minutes
stages
to actually get to that
themselves-
boss.
The stages themselves, if you're really good, they take maybe 30 seconds to get through. So
30 seconds to a minute, yeah.
yeah,
But I-
Unless one of those scrolling levels.
yeah, which there aren't any. There's level 4, which is skippable. But again,
Oh.
yeah, they call them worlds when it clearly says on screen
their
World
levels.
1. It's like, now he has to go back to World 1. It's like, that's the whole thing. He was in level 3, not level 2.
Actually, technically, no, they are. It's the ship levels.
No, but
Those are
level 4 is also an auto scroller, but you can skip
Again, they
that one.
didn't even get that far.
I know. I'm just pointing that out. That would be the only thing that would take up time.
right.
Mhm.
But the other problem, aside from just the fact that they didn't know how the mechanics worked, and they were talking about warping to a later stage wouldn't help you get points. It would just make you have to deal with tougher enemies. So like that
Yeah.
being his go-to to catch up after dying twice was stupid. But there was also the weird point where Haley and Corey are both yelling at him to do certain things, how it'll cause a certain effect. It's like, how do they know that? The game didn't
Yeah.
exist until this minute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The whole point of this
What's
was the Super Mario.
The whole
Brothers
point is
thing
to
was
play a game
murder.
that they've never seen before, which if
Yeah,
you wanna run with that idea, I can sort of accept that as an idea, but that would
Yeah.
only work if they were playing. They only played one preliminary round. Is it preliminary round, and then it's like final, and it's like playoffs, and then finals or something? There's usually another round between that, right?
Right, but they
Right.
just eliminated hundreds of contestants
Hundreds
in
of
the first
contestants to
round.
the top 3. So as
Apparently,
I'm thinking, it's
Ninja
like,
Gaiden is just
if
that
you
tough
had
of
to
a
pick
game
a
that
game-
only 3 would manage to succeed.
it's like you look at December of 1998 when this came out, right? 98.
Right.
Mhm.
You look at December of 1998, and you have to pick a game
Wait, no,
that
it was
is
89.
not out
It was
yet.
89.
89, yeah, that's right, 89. I knew it was an 8-9 was in one position, but yeah, December of 1989, and you look at it and say, and you have to pick a game that's not out yet, but will be out soon, because Super Mario 3 ended up coming out in February the next year. So you have to look at a game. What would they? And they have to pick a game that's not out yet. What could you possibly pick that wouldn't be a massive fuck you? Because this is Super Mario Brothers 3. Super Mario Brothers is like the ubiquitous NES game. Everybody knew that. Everybody knew about all the secrets and things. Well, maybe not everybody, but the people who played it, people who understood it, the transition from Super Mario Brothers to Super Mario Brothers 3 is very easy. If you can play Super Mario, you can play Super Mario 3. You stomp the enemies, you kick the shells, you get points. You don't let them run into you. There's an easy transition there. What other game could you possibly pick that would work for that? You couldn't pick any other thing that's like coming out. What are you gonna pick? Magic of Scheherazade, Astyanax? Like Super Mario Bros. 3 was like the only game that they could have picked if they had to pick one that wasn't out yet. Right?
I think the reason...
And plus,
ahead.
this movie was more or less
A big advertisement for it, yeah.
Yeah, because the game was literally going to be coming out, I think, right around the movie came out itself.
Yeah, the movie came out in December. Super Mario Bros. 3 came out in February the next year in the U.S.
So,
it was already out in Japan.
Yeah, and it just clicked with me. While the kids should not know about these things in the game because the game literally is brand new, the fact is, I think they were doing that simply because they were also trying to be, well, at least they thought they were being clever, is by giving when kids would go out to get the game, hey,
they would know this. They would know these
giving
tips.
hints.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure that was exactly what they were thinking. Yeah, which is also not a new, which might have been new at the time, but it's not the first. They've done that before as well. In the Mortal Kombat movie, there are icons that appear during the credits, which is a code to put into the game.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
But I will say, as a movie where the main focus was supposed to be the video game tournament, yeah, the actual tournament was kind of disappointing. I feel
Yes,
like
it was. It was really kind of shit. You want to look at something like Rocky, where the tournament is a big thing. It's like you could actually follow. That's the whole thing. Like the video games, they constantly get shit wrong. You never see this stuff happen in sports competition movies. Like
That's
you
what
never
really-
see them saying some stupid rule about baseball. And it's like, oh, he gets to hit the ball. That means he gets 20 points. It's like that doesn't, because everybody knows that's not how fucking baseball works.
I
You never
also
see
got-
that same sort of treatment in video games.
I also got to realize the tournament was kind of really damn short too.
yeah, that's what I was saying. And part of the thing is, I think so because the creepy child chaser guy never really gets a proper comeuppance. Like, I feel like they could have just scrapped that entire plot line and had the tournament been longer.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that would have been a good thing, because
I-
the whole idea is them trying to kind of bond over these video games. Like the father doesn't understand it, but the kid understands it, which is really just kind of a MacGuffin for the two brothers to get along. The fact that this kid is good at video games, which we haven't even mentioned, that's really the entire crux of this movie, is that the kid is inexplicably very good at video games.
Right.
Which is kind of like if you look at one of those things where like she doesn't talk but she's an amazing artist or something, and you kind of see that as like those old like art house films where like she's a deaf mute but she is like she is an amazing artist. She takes one look at anything and she can use her amazing photographic memory. Is like, which again kind of tracks with him being written as or coded autistic, which again they never say, but you kind of assume that's what they're doing.
Right.
So it's just him like finding out this talent that he has he's able to kind of exploit him to manipulate people, which in the hands of a better writer or someone who knew what they were doing, this could actually have been a decent movie.
Yeah. And it's just they really handled the tournament poorly because, like we said, they had hundreds of kids there and they limited all but 3 of them on a single game. It's like that would be a terrible way to set up a tournament if they had more time. It felt like because they shoved the tournament at the end of the movie, they didn't have enough time to make it as long as it should have been.
Even the official Nintendo World Championships, it was split across 3 games.
Yeah.
Not to mention, if you would have given the tournament more time, they would have also given the studio more time to actually have the kids run around the studio and show off more stuff in the park.
Yeah. In fact, that part kind of fell short because it was also more or less an advertisement for that too. But all you really got to see was a couple of Universal monsters and
The kind of the tour through the tram ride, yeah.
Yeah, and King Kong, and that's about it.
By the way, funny thought that just occurred to me. You realize that Universal has now got a Super Mario World in it.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, that's actually. If they actually did do a remake, that actually would work a lot well with that.
Oh yeah. Very much so.
Since we're talking about the video games, I think we do need to actually talk about Lucas now because
Oh, yes.
Well, yeah, it's true.
um,
Play the
The
play
power
the
glove,
music.
it's so bad.
Which that they do they even show him using the power glove in the tournament?
no,
Nope.
You would
Tournament?
expect
No.
him to do that. Because
They-
I
again,
know.
it was just this whole thing was advertisement for the Power Glove and Super Mario Bros.
Right.
3 and Universal Studios Hollywood.
but you got to keep one thing in mind. Usually at tournaments, you're not allowed to like bring your own equipment.
Yeah,
you
of
have
course.
to use what's there.
True.
Actually, in like fighting game tournaments, most people bring their own sticks because their own muscle memory.
True.
Depends.
I
It
see
depends.
that, I guess.
It depends on the
Depends- it
competition, but
depends
in
on the
many
competition,
cases,
yeah.
like in like the top level, like Evo and stuff, they would have their own fight sticks that they would bring. It has to kind of meet their standards and stuff, but it has to be like tournament legal to use. But they would bring their own fight sticks specifically because of their own muscle memory.
Right.
But yeah, I get what they would have to use their own hardware and everything.
But yeah, so Lucas, like he's pretty much the main antagonist that everybody actually remembers from this movie.
Which, for a moment, he was actually kind of seeming like a decent. Maybe if he had been given more time in the script, he
Yeah,
would have
that-
kind of had his character moment where he's like,
Yeah.
he
That's
just kind of
a
shakes
better,
Jimmy's hands. But no, he
decent
tries to
rival
sabotage
character,
the
yeah.
guy. He tries to
Right.
sabotage Jimmy when he
Just
finds
has
out
to
he actually is
sabotage
good.
them without even being a part of the game. Yeah.
Right.
Which again, I feel like maybe had a little time to build up with him. Like maybe he tries to play friendly with them at first, then later he gets a little more antagonistic because
He
he's
gets
trying
more
to-
antagonistic, gets
yeah,
frustrated
yeah,
with them slowly undermining him. Yeah.
Yeah, I would have had them
I mean,
like
hell-
actually
hell,
have a
he-
meeting and like play against the kid. He like underestimates the kid, and then he like comes back and he plays and he creams and he beats the kid's ass again because he'd been practicing a lot. So then they end up finally meeting at the competition. And it's like this one's for all the marbles and shit.
I mean, hell, he even goes like one attempt to hit on Haley. And
Yeah, which
then
that
after
was weird because then Corey
it-
gets all defensive over it when he has like expressed no interest in her at all.
Yeah, and he grabs her arm and is like, "I'm gonna be at that tournament too," and
Keep your power gloves off of her. And it's like,
but then after that it's like, okay, that's completely dropped, and it's just goes to the, I just want to get rid of Jimmy, and it's like, why? You didn't seem to have a problem with him before.
Right. He thought he was gonna cream him, and it was weird.
Now
Like
something. He's nervous.
Yeah, it really feels
yeah,
like
he saw how good Jimmy actually is. So he's like,
Yeah,
okay, this is an actual threat. I need to get this kid out of here.
like you said, if they had removed the whole child catcher guy out completely, I really feel that would help a lot in giving a little more time both to the tournament and probably Lucas as the actual antagonist, because I think he should have been.
Yeah,
basically.
there is a lot that you could just establish about this guy because this is 1989. He has 97 games, which looking back, there were about 200 to 250 games released for the NES around that time. So he has roughly half of the library.
probably has all the ones that are worth owning.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. I believe it.
So he kind of comes off like when he's in the competition, like the actor is playing, he has this very good kind of steely-eyed look. So you can clearly see you can clearly kind of see the gears turning in his head as how he's trying to focus on his games. But he's kind of looking at Jimmy. He's like, "What is this kid? Do I need to worry about this kid? What do I need to do with him?"
Let's eliminate him.
In my mind, Lucas was kind of one of those rich kids who, like, both of his parents owned like 12 businesses in town. So he's like, his parents never had any time for him, but they were rich, so they just bought him any games he wanted, and he fell into video games and he's like kind of this
That's his
cocky
life.
guy who's like, oh yeah, I'm one of the richest kids in town. My parents buy me everything, and I have all these games that I'm awesome at.
Yeah,
Don't you
you
want to
see-
date me?
Yeah,
oh my
see,
god! I
they-
just
they-
realized
they-
I've been recording this whole time with my fucking webcam microphone.
Oh dear.
Oh, boy.
Oh well.
And but
Sorry
yeah,
about the quality.
but again, like I say, they should have gave him some character. That would have helped a lot. But
Yeah.
there was no time for it.
No.
So they had no time for this stuff, but what did they end up spending the time on? Because this is a rather fast-paced movie. Like I said, it is kind of a live-action cartoon. They get kind of right into the plot in like the first 5 minutes.
Well, because they had to keep having the plot with the child catcher, a lot of times was focused with the dad and the older son brother.
Yeah, they focus way too much on the wrong characters.
which
Especially if they got rid of the child
I-
catcher, they could have spent like half the time they
well,
spent with them and
uh,
easily filled in more time with the actual game.
I was gonna
Exactly. They
say
don't need the child catcher there. They just need
no.
the father and the brother kind of trailing them, and
Yeah, I was gonna,
they're bonding about video games while the kids are kind of off
And
having
they're
their own
bonding.
adventure.
And while they're
Just kind of
bonding,
chasing
maybe
them,
they're
kind
the
of on
ones
their
that keep
tail.
in contact with the mother.
because I was gonna say I was fine with the dad and the older son brother dynamic because it was basically showing that the dad clearly lost touch with his kids because of the whole divorce, but
Hmm.
going after them and spending time with his older son clearly got him back into giving a damn.
So yeah, they
And
didn't need that child catcher
Yeah.
villain
No,
at
not at
all
all.
because you have the whole thing where they trying to Jimmy wants to go to California for whatever reason, and his brother's just trying to be a good brother, so he takes him there, and he finds out about this gaming competition that his brother is really good at video games, so it's like. Okay, he wants to go to California. This is a gaming competition in California. Sure, we take him to California, get him in this gaming tournament. Even though the Jimmy doesn't even really have any interest in that, because I would honestly, yeah, you can see I would have it written where like he goes to have where he wins and he goes to collect the money and Jimmy's not there because Jimmy's off kind of wandering trying to get to where he ends up going without getting if you want to get into that yet.
yeah, though I did like the scene, after they get attacked by the teenagers, or I think they were teenagers,
The bullies.
the bullies, and lost all their money. It seemed like at first they were basically just ready to give up and go their split ways. When Jimmy says he actually talks and says, "I don't want to give up," and that causes Haley and Corey to come back, and we're like, "All right, let's not give up."
Which
It's like,
would have been
I was,
more important, which would have had more impact if they kind of established that Jimmy. They kind of hint that Jimmy doesn't talk much, but he does talk rather frequently. He kind of talks to the people in the car and stuff, but they don't really establish that him saying full sentences is a big thing.
right.
They don't really kind of establish that.
Well, to be fair, the three-fourths of his dialogue is "Hi" and "California."
I mean, you're not wrong.
Yeah, even Jimmy.
Outside of like 3 or 4 other times, that's all the dialogue he has.
I got distracted because I was messing with my sound settings, but what I was gonna say, one thing in regards to Lucas is like, because they didn't give him enough time, he ended up the same problem as the other antagonist, where you never actually see what happens. He tried to sabotage Jimmy, but then you don't even really see his reaction to the fact that he lost.
So he looks downtrodden after
which
the event is done. That's it.
In fact, that should have been one of the bigger, parts of the ending. Was okay. Does Lucas accept his defeat, honorably, or does he just act like a complete?
Or you have it written where Lucas loses, but he ends up, and then like at one point, like maybe the child catcher comes up is like, do you know where this would not work with what actually happened in the movie, but like someone comes up and Lucas, he has this chance to get his revenge on Jimmy or something, or like point out where Jimmy is, and he just looks at it like, I don't know where he is, and he like lies and like protects Jimmy because even though he beat him, he still kind of respects him for being this great gamer, and he obviously doesn't want something this bad to happen to him. So like that's how I would kind of, if I was rewriting this movie, that's one of the scenes that I would put in.
I mean, yeah, I could go along with that. Or if we take the child catcher out completely, maybe change it to maybe the dad and brother, and because he might be thinking, oh, if they find Jimmy, I might not get another chance to beat him in the tournament or something.
Or if they find Jimmy, Jimmy will be taken out of the tournament and I'll win by default because this other girl I can easily beat, because they don't really establish her at all. They just kind of, she's this girl from California.
Yeah, that was the other thing. The third contestant just kind of was there.
Just there.
This girl
and,
with
and,
pigtails.
and the announcer referee guy
Being very handsy with her hair.
Yeah,
I don't think he could read anything into that. He was just kind of being, he's being kind of carnival barker,
very
just kind of trying to
flamboyant.
get everybody interested.
I can get that. It's just at the same time you had the movie where you had the other girl screaming about somebody touching her when yes, technically didn't happen, but
Right.
Kind of funny how they had those two funny situations.
Yeah, if I was to rewrite things to at least make Lucas's character a little more interesting and grounded,
Hmm.
the one first rewrite I would put into it was that point where he points out the kids to the child grabber is to actually have him try and help the kids escape instead because he wants a fair fight.
Hmm.
And then I also at the very end of the final match would be him walking up to Jimmy and just going good game and doing some sort of handshake or something.
Hmm. Yeah, I can go along with
It'd be more sensible and would make him a more interesting antagonist.
So, I kind of want to talk about the ending now, like beyond
Right.
the tournament,
Of
where
course.
we obviously we learn all along the reason that Jimmy kept saying California wasn't because he wanted to specifically go to California. He wanted to go to a specific place in California, which was that dinosaur tourist attraction where there's like a shop inside the dinosaur because
We
that
call
was
the Cabazon dinosaurs.
right, because it was the last place he had a memory of his deceased twin sister at this point.
And also, yeah, it's the last
Yes.
place that their family was all together, and
Hmm.
it. Right.
just what he calls California. So like, which makes sense. Like you show the kid who doesn't have great language skills, and he's also very young at this point as well. So you show him this picture is like this picture was taken in California, so it's just a word that he understands as California, and he
That ties to the
associates it with
picture.
this picture.
Right, and that makes a lot of sense, honestly.
It was an interesting twist that I'd kind of forgotten about. Like I couldn't remember what the reason was, but
I'm pretty sure all the other reviews I've ever seen actually do skip over trying to tell you how that particular plot ends and why they're actually out there, just that they go to the monument for some reason.
Yeah, because like a lot of the reviews, they kind of talk about how bad the movie is, but they don't really talk about what the movie is about or what they try to. Because a lot of times, they say a movie is bad, you kind of gloss over it, just kind of look at all the shitty aspects of it. But when you never set out to make a bad movie. You try to tell some sort of story. And like the main story in this is about a family trying to stay together after the loss of a family member and their son that's not in a good mental state after it. So at the crux, they're still trying to tell this story about that. It doesn't exactly work well, but you kind of respect what they're trying to do with this sort of thing. So when you analyze the movie in that sense, you have to kind of portray that you do kind of understand what they're trying to do. Whether or not it works is irrelevant, but you kind of have to try to understand the movie, at least in one sense. And I feel like a
Right.
lot of people who review this movie don't really understand it or don't even try to understand. They just write it off as like, this is just a shitty movie, which kind of is, but no.
To agree, I wouldn't call it shitty. I just call it
Underwhelming,
mid, mediocre.
mid, yeah. I felt very similarly about this movie as I did with Masters of the Universe. Was I was just kind of getting lost in all the '80s nostalgia, like seeing all the brands and everything, and all the music and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, definitely.
so before we end the podcast, figure go around. Matt, do you have any final thoughts you want to talk about?
Final thoughts. I guess I will say that this actually was my first outing all the way through that I can remember. I'm thinking I may have seen it very young, many, many, many moons ago, like 4 years old. And I honestly have no definite memories of that particular viewing, just that I may have seen at least a decent chunk of it at one point. Never got the plot, saw video game footage, and that was about it. Um, I will say that I generally feel that it's a little bit better than what some people let on, but it's also by no means Shakespeare.
No.
I could definitely see where a few decent rewrites and maybe some rearranging of things could actually make this an improved movie, even with just this movie. That and maybe some more video game footage, and again, a slightly longer tournament would actually help interest the kids too. Just saying.
Right. TZ.
Yeah, I'm in a very similar boat. I remember watching, kind of liking this movie as a kid, mostly because it had video game footage. I would just watch them play video games. Anytime I saw people playing video games on TV, I got excited. I was that kind of dork. But yeah, watching it now, I do kind of see there is a lot of potential here that they just did not care about. I think it's kind of obvious that the writers didn't really care what they were doing with this, because it was just kind of an advertising thing for Mario and Nintendo and all this stuff. But there is one thing that I have in my notes that I forgot to mention, where he's talking about playing Zelda 2, and where he's talking about how he got all the way to the sixth Hyrule Palace, and you could tell that he's kind of given these words to say. He's like, I made it to the sixth Hyrule Palace, and I got the magic key, and I got the magic cross, and I was closing in the barbarian. And you were almost there. You almost had the sentence. Yeah, I defeated the River Devil. I was like, yeah, that's an actual character of the game, but his name is Barba. His name is not. He's not the barbarian. So you almost had it, but no, you lost it right there.
It's by that much.
Too bad. Just missed it.
Oh, you gotta be quicker than that.
Ojunix.
Like I said, because this is definitely the bill of movies I've watched a lot as a kid. Um, you know, just the kids having adventures and all that. Um, Obviously dumb plots, but they were enjoyable, and I was the target audience. So in straight, I really liked this movie just because it's the type of stuff I enjoyed and still do to a degree. Good soundtrack. Honestly, the only real parts I had issues was the kid catcher, and wishing the tournament and Lucas had been more expanded upon for the movie, for being something that literally was being used as advertisement, and it barely did much of the advertisements.
Yeah, so when you look at it that way, you look at it for what it's trying to be. When it's trying to be an advertisement for video games, it's a pretty shitty one of those. Because you think about this, you were the absolute target demographic for this sort of thing. Kids who like video games and want to see video games in movies. This is like the worst possible version of that. You compare it to something like, I don't know, Power Rangers. If you were into Power Rangers and you watched the Power Rangers movie, you got the fucking Power Rangers.
Yeah.
If you're into Nintendo and you watch this, you're like, what the fuck is this?
Very true. But overall, I still actually consider this a pretty decent movie.
And for me, like, I know I saw this movie as a kid, but, like, I barely remembered anything. Like I mentioned to you guys before, I forgot this movie existed until Nostalgia Critic did a review of it. And then it's like, oh yeah, that was a thing. Why
So you're
didn't...
saying he remembered it so you don't have to.
He remembered it so he could remember it.
I'm like, I don't even know why I don't remember that movie, but it's like one of those things. I think I imagine that as a kid I must have saw it, and just there was nothing about it that made me want to rewatch it, so then it just faded from my memory.
That's absolutely understandable.
Yeah.
Because I mean, like you said, it's got video games in it, but it's not based on a video game. There's no actual story involving a specific game, so it didn't really have those aspects that would have made me want to rewatch it as a kid. I also just, in general, as a kid, tended to not like shows or movies starring other children.
That makes sense. Yeah.
I wanted to see like action stuff or cartoons. I didn't want to see kids being kids because, well, I was already doing that myself.
Right.
If you wanted to play video games, you could play video games. You had a Nintendo.
Yeah, exactly. So that's more or less our thoughts on this. And wow, we actually went pretty long in spite of not doing the whole go over the whole plot thing this time.
We had plenty to say about this movie. This is kind of one of the infamous ones among gamers our age.
And yet, I still say this is still the more positive, one of the more positive ones.
Yeah,
Yes.
compared to some of the other movies we've looked at on this podcast so far, yeah, this is up there. It's still pretty mid, but yeah, I'm sure it'll fall as we see other movies, but this was not terrible. to sit through.
I could see it slowly going down as we accidentally bump into some decent fun ones, but I can also see it rising real quickly too because there's some stinkers out there.
Yeah, there's some
Ooh.
big stinkers on our list, including what I think is our next planned movie, which is Dead or Alive.
Ooh.
Another one.
Well,
I
if you
haven't
want to
seen.
talk about things that are
Oh.
good
No.
representations of what they're supposed to be about, this movie was supposed to be about video games. At least Dead or Alive is about chicks in bikinis. So I'm looking
Chicks in
forward to it.
bikinis that kick high.
And yet, that's not technically the point of Dead or Alive. It does have a deep plot. The problem was it basically just advertised sex appeal.
Right. Well, I mean, one of the biggest thing,
Alive didn't?
we'll talk about it later.
Yeah, I agree with you,
Right.
Stu.
So until next time, everybody, don't watch. I forgot what the fuck we said at the end of these.
Don't watch bad movies. Let us do it for you.
Yeah, something like that. My brain just turned into mush after I realized I had my webcam microphone on.
It happens.
California.
Later.
California.
Bye.